SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeeps.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity.
What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com.
You sure?
I am very sure. My name is Neil with SFJ 4x4 Simpson Family Jeeps, joined in Grandma's couch studio and afar, and you'll know what I mean when I say that, folks who are listening in. We do have a special guest on air today, but in Grandma's couch studio,
We have Jeff, the producer, over there, in a shirt I don't own. I need to find one of those. So
you two are actually in different clothes.
But it's perfect because you have a shirt on that I don't own either. So
we got to fix that.
we nailed this.
Ooh, the twins. The
Yeah.
twins figured out how to break the matrix for the first time.
Yeah.
You actually... folks, I mean, if you don't know what that inside joke is, I mean, it's literally they just wear the same clothes. They have a similar body build. They both wear schmediums. They get upset if they're not in a
And
schmedium.
it's constantly we'll walk in and we're both wearing the same shirt.
And they wear the same clothes. And the rest of us are convinced that they call each other ahead of school. like they're middle school teenage girls planning their outfits for the next days. But they don't. And I don't know. And there was a time when we actually took a picture of them from the back, and we had to hide Jeffrey's sleeve, his tattoo sleeve. But we took a picture from the back, and they were darn near identical. Tried sending it off to their wives, figure out which one's which. So anyways, that's what that one is for. With this all said, we do have a special guest.
Well, we also have the mad scientist sitting over there.
Oh, he's not a special guest. He's not.
I know, but he
Well, you forgot to introduce him. I got all excited about, you guys twinning, and we forgot to mention him. Before we get to our special guest, I should mention that this weekend is Bantam Trail Festival. I'm certain that there are some other opportunities going on out there, Trail Hero included, but on a regional level, Bantam Trail Festival, and they always try to do a nice kind of Halloween-inspired, opportunity. There are from Mile to Wild trails available, so if you just want to get out there and stretch the legs of your Jeep and do some fall foliage, you can do it with them. If you want to get out there and bang off some rocks, you can do it with them. So that's what's kind of going on in the Northeast. Jeffrey, anything on...
Well, in the comments, we've got Jaga Jeepers first saying good morning, SFJ. Got Bill McWilliams saying good morning. Robert Seaman saying mornings. Joe O'Brien says good morning. Daddy Jeep says morning, guys. We'll be seeing him this coming weekend at the Trail Fest. And you got Jeannie saying good morning. I'm sitting here hunting so I can make some more deer jerky. Happy hunting.
Oh, happy hunting for those of you. I think it's archery season, filling doe tags and, trying to gauge their bucks for upcoming rifle season if you're into that.
Oh, and then Roy just joined in too. So good morning, Roy.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you for prioritizing and joining us here. And so all of you listening elsewhere in the world, in the 6 out of 7 continents and 90+ countries, first and foremost, thank you so much for prioritizing this time and energy as your infotainment.
And we also have a birthday shout out. Nate has just joined in, says good morning. He was not first, and he also can't stay long today as it's his little guy's 5th birthday, and they're going out to celebrate.
Outstanding. Congratulations to you guys. And I know how important his child is with their wheeling adventures and what wheeling means to their family. So happy birthday to him. There's lots of comments coming in. But in the interim, we're going to have to keep moving on. As I was mentioning, thank you all for prioritizing this program as part of your infotainment. And you too can join us in the comments almost every Monday at 10:19 a.m. And we are on the march to SEMA. So that one will be a little cattywampus coming up in the very near future because I don't exactly know what that's going to look like. I'm supposed to be moving a couple Jeeps into position well, you two are going to be representing here in the studio.
Yep.
And exactly what and how we'll do that. Maybe I'll be a remote guest, as we have done in the past.
Yep.
We'll see how that plays out. So, in the interim, who do we have today, Jeffrey?
We have Matt from Revolution Gear and Axle. Matt, are you there?
I am here.
All right.
Outstanding. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a fun opportunity, Jeffrey. I don't know if you had an opportunity to create any specific questions or outlines.
No,
for the day.
I left it as a conversational.
Woo, we're going to be winging it.
Well, you're going to wing it anyway, so
I would.
That's fair.
I've prepared notes for you how many times, and you followed the script once.
I do really good with the songs that you crappily produce and
That's
you
true.
AI produce.
The papers do keep the couch warm.
The papers are nice, but I don't know. Maybe it would give Matt confidence in the fact that we're not going to ask him something cattywampus in the process.
We'll see.
I think he's prepared.
You think he's prepared? Okay. I've actually had the opportunity just even recently at Smoky Mountain to catch up with Matt and had a very good conversation. And Matt and I met a few years ago when he was very diligently trying to convince us that there was a better alternative gear manufacturer on the market. And and trying to represent Revolution accordingly. Now, we pull no punches that we are, historically, we've sold a lot of Dana Spicer components, and also historically, we sold a lot of Yukon. But as of many things, all businesses have their ups and downs, and while we're still very, very happy with Dana Spicer, I am finding myself less and less thrilled about my Yukon offerings. So with that said, we were very loyal to them and as a product supplier, but if they are not able to deliver for our customer, then what's the point? Right? And that's a very personal, professional approach that I take, that our customer comes first regardless of our relationships with manufacturers. And if manufacturers are not able to fulfill the way that we expect them to, again, we treat your Jeep like it's our Jeep, and I want arguably the very best for whatever given circumstance it is. In that interim, there are a number of alternative, there are a number of gear manufacturers out there, Richmond, Motive, and Revolution came on the scene some years ago. In the aftermarket, Matt, when would you say that Revolution really took its stronghold?
Well, first I would say it was probably, I want to say it's 2012 is when the branding came about.
Okay.
We've been making gear since 1984, just kind of had a different business model. 12 was when we kind of looked at the scope of things and saw how things were going, right? E-commerce. We kind of thought just wholesaling white box to companies maybe wasn't the route to just put all our eggs in one basket. And that's kind of when we decided, like I said, to brand. But I wouldn't say that's when we really got, stole market share. I would say that. Yeah, that would probably be, last 3 years, definitely.
For sure.
Every year it's gotten, it was better, right?
Right.
We took a very grassroots approach to it. And I joke around with a lot of people and say we would blindfold ourselves and throw darts at a dartboard or a map, if you will. And all right, I guess we're going to Topeka, Kansas today. But we did a lot of stuff like that, where we would, let's say we had a customer, and let me back up just a bit, but our company is a gear company first and foremost. So 1984 was when it was founded. We make a lot of internal components for transfer cases and manual transmissions. So we had big remanufacturers, builders shop, large shops, and that's kind of how we focused on, regionally growing the brand Revolution. So we would, let's say, fly into a Kansas City or an Oklahoma City, and then we would plan out a full week where we would start there and just kind of sweep that regional area, talking about Revolution and what we do, because there's a lot of overlap, like I'm sure you're aware of, right? There's a lot of guys that are building transfer cases and transmissions that also do differential. But we would also look and just do Google and Yelp searches where, hey, there's X amount of off-road shops, there's X amount of differential repair in the area, and we would just really just knock on doors and just spread the word. But to really answer your question, yeah, I would say about the last 3 years. Wow, it's just taken off. It's a testament to, I think, our team really. We do these shows, whether they're the larger shows or even the smaller shows. And there was a point in time where you talk to 10 people within an hour, and 2-3 of them would know who you are. And it's very rare that somebody comes up to the booth now and says, I don't know who you are. So
Sure.
it's just, it just proves a lot of hard work's paid off.
Yeah, I get it. And I can identify entirely too well, because quite frankly, 12 was when I went full-time as well. And we were part-time business prior to that, and full-time enthusiasts. And 12 is when I kind of took the leap of faith, involuntarily, but got out there regardless. And then that concept of, continuing to kind of carve out market share. I get it, entirely in an organic fashion. It was just like, hey, we have this great core, this great foundational purpose, and then you got to get in front of the Jeepers. And I always said we will go where the Jeepers are at, and that way we can kind of, share the message. And exactly what you're saying is, as far as, at one time you got to really bite and fight and scratch to get people to go, hey, you're a legitimate business. And now there's oftentimes, there's not often an occasion where people haven't heard a little bit about you, So what you're sharing is, I get it entirely too well. And of course, when you guys branded, kind of the boom between 12 and 16, 17 was this boom market for gearing, because of course the 07 to 11 JK was just hot garbage and was geared poorly with an underdog of an engine, and gears were just a hot topic. Every, Jim, Bob, and Harry was trying to make a gear just to do something with this minivan motor Jeep. So I get it, and you guys obviously started to do some market share. Now, what I think is interesting for folks at home who are listening, I heard you mention white box production. Maybe could you break that down to maybe if somebody's unfamiliar with what that means?
Yeah, so it's just an unbranded gear, right? So we manufacture our product, and there's, whether it's, like I said, let's just say it's a large factory that just rebuilds or remanufactures axles, right? So they strip it, they'll sandblast it, obviously paint the actual axle housing, and then they'll stuff it with guts, carriers, whether it's an open carrier or a posi, a locker, ring and pinion, and then axle shafts. So, a lot of those guys are just on a white box program, right? And then there's other aftermarket gear manufacturers that do the same thing. Whether it's almost the whole percentage of their gear line, or it's 10% or 20 or 30 or 50, doesn't really matter. But that's kind of where I think we really won a lot of fans over, as far as just more so shop owners and installers, right? And I think, the first 2 or 3 conversations you and I had, and listen, just like you started this episode off, you're a loyal guy. And I even told you that when you were like, listen, I just don't have room for you. But anytime you see me, stop by and say hello. And I appreciate that so much, just in the sense that I need and I want customers the same way. Right.
Sure.
So I kind of digress there, but that was the thing that I pushed so hard on installers or shop owners, was just give us a shot. Just the gear setup consistency, which obviously time is money. That's such a huge factor, right? The quality hands down is there. But the ease of install is, I think, what really won the hearts over of a lot of these shops. And why I say that is because of our main principle is we don't rebox anything. If it comes in a Green Revolution box, it's 100% our product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for quality control reasons, for setup reasons, it's really second to none, at least in the aftermarket, right? You mentioned Dana Spicer have they're a great company. It's Dana Spicer, right?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
they're obviously not reboxing anyone's product. But on the aftermarket side, we are the only company that can say that, and I can say that with certainty.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that was exactly one of our biggest frustrations. And of course, when we met, and I can't exactly articulate when that was, and we had developed as far as SFJ 4x4 was concerned, we had developed a lifeline relationship with Yukon, and so we had the Yukon. We had a rep there who was a really gifted gear and axle mind. Like, he understood bearings and races and ring gear cuts, and there is still a couple individuals there within their tech department who arguably are very gifted gear minds, right? But this rep was awesome, and he for the most part really benefited our business as far as kind of putting us in tune with things that were on the edge of the market, right? The pulse of the market. And that helped build our brand. And then we have a specific technician. While everybody here has touched gears in some capacity, doing axles ourselves years ago, we have one technician, our lead performance mechanic, who just, again, has a gifted brain for it. And I value his feedback highly in the process, but then also the logistics of the business. And so we had been doing a lot of setup with Yukon, and so we would oftentimes give our customers an option, whether they wanted Yukon or Spicer, ring and pinions. But then there was kind of these alternative options as far as, like, there was warranties on their ring and pinions, and there was other products that maybe Spicer doesn't make as easy to access for the aftermarket. Maybe, would be a gear kit bundle. It created some customer service and some ease of consumption from our part, from our consumer standpoint. The brand Yukon helped sell our ability to be relevant in the gear market. As things, moved and changed, the reboxing became a problem. And this is where I was going with you kind of came up to me one day. We were at Bantam, and I think you were on the edge of the market. You saw things coming. You and Revolution by extension were like, hey, you might need us one day. And that was all, you know what I mean? And you were like, I get solicited constantly with people far more pushy than your approach. And it, Jeff oftentimes as our front end filter will just like hang up. Not that he'll just hang up the phone, but he'll filter out some of these.
I literally tried to bill somebody for using up my time.
You did. You had a solicitor call the other day, and he said, "Well, I'm going to start to invoice you now." So that wasn't your approach. It was, I think you were on the cusp of the market, and you said, "Hey, I can see some things coming," right? And at that time, we still had, I don't know, 11,000 air quotes, gear and axle retailers, because every Jim Bob all of a sudden, Rough Country, Nitro, and then all of the subsidiary lines were selling rings and pinions, you know what I mean? And Alloy USA and G2, a lot of ones who are not relevant by today's markets, but there was a saturation.
Sure.
And you were kind of like, hey, just keep me in mind. So from our standpoint, when we started unwrapping boxes from what we felt was a reputable supplier, and it was a Rebox, and
then setups weren't going quite as well.
And setups were going poorly.
And we'd have, people mistakenly say, oh, a Dana 44 is a Dana 44 is a Dana 44, until it isn't.
Right.
And that goes with any, manual transmission can be the same way. A 79 T18 and a 80 T18, are very different transmissions. So when you have that fringe stuff, and since we do 41 to present, we see all of it.
Right.
When you don't have a company that's able to assist, when you take it apart and like suddenly there's a seal here, or this one has a little bit of a different thrush washer, and you need to figure that out. When you don't have a competent person on the other side of the phone that you can kind of like, hey, I want to put this back. We don't want to be the business that just goes, oh, well.
And that's exactly the thing, is that we don't really get the easy jobs.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You were talking about that, and we're not the business who goes, oh, well, you're SOL. We're the guys who have to, dig down and roll up our sleeves and
Figure it out.
And that we were lacking that, what we once had, because that individual, that rep that I was talking about with Yukon, he was moved on in some capacity, and that relationship started to struggle, and we got the reboxes and then cuts of gears. A lot of people at home don't understand that specifically our technician and all technicians, oftentimes, if the edges of the gears are too harsh, they'll actually make noise and hum. And a lot of people who set them up, and you see these horror stories about gears being noisy. Our technician, oftentimes, he was getting out the ring and pinion, and he was dressing the gears for longer and longer because the cut was entirely too square or imperfect in the process. And dressing the gears, for folks that are at home, is basically filing each and every tooth of the ring and pinion.
On both sides.
Yeah. And because of impurities and our interest in having a good quality setup.
Just a race to the bottom, because like you had said, we had so many different manufacturers on the scene, so suddenly you have people just looking at price alone.
Yes.
They don't understand the quality aspect. They don't understand how much time you're going to lose on setup. So it's myself kind of good to see a company like Revolution looking at the quality and going, no, we are not going to sell a product that way.
Correct. And I think that's the biggest frustration is I feel like we all think there's a little bit of, as a consumer, I think one of our triggers is the smoke and mirrors, the bait and switch.
Yes.
Right? And so if you are, we've all seen it on the mechanical side of things. It's like my receipt says I got blah installed, and then I open up the hood and I'm like, oh, wait a second. They told me, and I'm making stuff up, folks. They told me I was getting a Dorman part, and now all of a sudden I have a Rugged Ridge part, or vice versa.
Yep.
Now it's like, well, I feel a little taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
And from a supply chain logistic, that's how we felt when we would open up a particular gear setup kit from not Dana Spicer, and we would get somebody else's gears in there.
The part I remember the most is we got a Reebox once.
We did. Yep.
And we're like, holy crap. This is literally from this other supplier that we actually have an account with, and we could have just gone straight to them.
Yes.
And they're not making gears. They're just reboxing as well.
Yes.
And we're like, how did we get here?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's tricky, right? I never have conversations with anyone, whether it's, we're obviously live right now, but if we were talking in a private conversation, I myself and my whole sales team, we're not going to trash any of our competitors. I think
that's I want to jump in. That's okay. I respect that. I'm going to put their business out there though, because that's what our customers deserve, right? And we're here to be in the middle of that. And just like I'm not going to put any of our other builders or anybody else necessarily out on blast. That's not my job. My job is to explain to you how we do things with excellence. Now, if there's somebody within the supply chain who's not holding up their end of the bargain, then our customers, then our community deserves to know that, right? So one's a business moral piece, and I can respect that for you guys. On the other hand, one is a defense of our community, and that's where I'm going to step in.
When certain companies, and it's not just specific to the automotive industry, right? It's branding, right? It's just having this huge conglomerate, right? And so I guess what I'm getting at is you there's a couple paths you can go down, but I believe two in specific to what we're talking about, and it's you want the SKUs and you're going to keep growing the SKUs, but you can't actually keep up with manufacturing of those part
Right.
numbers, correct?
Right.
Um, and then that's when you get into where you have to look to the supply chain and look to other companies. Um, with ourselves, we just decided at an early stage, and this predates, me being with the company. We're not going to do that. And is there times that we're going to lose sales on stuff? Yeah, because you guys call me up today and say I need this gear package and I don't have the rears. I can sell you the fronts, and some people don't want to mix match, and I can understand that. Some people don't have a problem with it, and sometimes you have no choice but to mix and match because of availability out in the supply chain. What I'm getting at is we took an early on approach to where we're just going to be, open, honest, no reboxing. And if that means we lose out on a sale here or there, it is what it is. But we thought just the way we were going to market and how we wanted to grow this brand and grow this company is that was the right approach for us. So yeah, it hurts at times. Now, as we've gotten more popular and our sales, keep increasing year after year, that obviously allows us to go into production on more, gears for the next batch or higher quantities or whatever that may be. So we see less of it because fortunately for us, we've seen, exponential growth over the last 3, 4, 5 years. But again, it was in the early days, it was tricky, right? It's like, all right, this is the cross we're going to bear. And there's going to be some growing pains from time to time. And not that there isn't still growing pains, but I think it's a lot easier to navigate through those instances.
Absolutely. And I respect a company that's willing to just put a line in the sand. Like, our quality is important. We'd rather not sell you a gear than sell you a crappy set of gears that is just in a different box. Because again, that stings for someone along that supply chain logistics.
And in their defense of sorts, their contention is and was, hey, you still get our warranty, you get our reputability. If you have a setup issue, you can call our tech line. And I from a business standpoint, I can identify and understand what their contention is. I can also simply accept that that's not how I'm going to do business.
Right.
Yep. For our customers, when they come to us, the expectation is that we do have a line in the sand.
Yep.
And again, we're going to miss market share on some people, right? Because they're just budget minded. They don't care. They're just trying to flip the vehicle, whatever it might be. And that's just always been my belief, is that there's enough business to go around for the vast majority of businesses, so long as you're doing things in a reputable fashion. And that's how we then pick and choose our supply chain logistics, So I appreciate it. As far as, as far as the quality of Revolution is concerned, are you willing to disclose some of the things that make you guys unique in your quality approach?
Well, I the obvious one is what I first touched on, right? Not reboxing. So from a quality control standpoint, it comes from the same factory every single time, which ease of setup is associated with that. I would say most of our top SKUs, and this is something to keep in mind, and it's the same with my competitors. I'm not saying we're any different in this regard, but we're highly known in the Jeep and the Toyota communities because of the off-roading and the overlanding. But we make a full line of differential products, right? So for example, people always are kind of amazed by this because again, we're associated with Jeep, Jeeps and Toyotas, but GM 10 bolts is what keeps the lights on. I mean, there's so many 10 bolts out there. Chrysler 9 1/4s, huge sellers for us. What I'm getting at is our really popular SKUs or differentials that are just kind of finicky. Chrysler 9 1/4 is one of them. We make 2 cuts for those, and a 2-cut ring and pinion is the old school version is a 5-cut. And I can explain that, or if you guys even want to elaborate, but what it is basically is you got a 5-cut, you got the ring gear that's cut 3 times, and you got a pinion that's cut twice. The total's 5 cuts. What they're talking about on a 2-cut is where it's a more precise cut, and the ring gear's only cut once, and then the pinion's cut once. The other thing that differentiates itself from a 5-cut is that the tooth profile. So if you're looking at a ring gear, the inside of that circle is the toe, and that the tooth on the outside is the heel. Now, obviously, I know you guys know that, but talking to the audience, if they may not know that,
Absolutely.
is there is more material on a 2-cut. The profile of that tooth, if you were to look from toe to heel, on a 5-cut, a traditional one is from the outside in, it's thicker and it tapers off. So there's less actual tooth or material, right? On a 2-cut, that tooth profile is the same from heel to toe. So obviously, more material, a stronger, more contact pattern, that's always a good thing. So between precise cut gears, more contact surface, it's just a superior gear. 10 bolts, Chrysler 9.25, 8.8, Ford 8.8s, and all our JL lineup. Those are all 2-cut gears. It doesn't mean a 5-cut's bad. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, we decide, there's only one gear company that makes a 2-cut gear. Well, I shouldn't say that, but as far as Jeeps go, Dana Spicer is a 2-cut ring and pinion.
Correct.
And we're the only other company that makes a 2-cut for JL and JT.
You know what I think is fun, and this is where I totally nerded out years ago, is that this, to my understanding, is literally about the machine that is cutting the ring and pinion. And I think that's sometimes lost on people, because as a general consumer, we look in at a business and we're like, well, they should just have infinite money, infinite resources to...
Oh, there's magic.
Yeah, there's magic. There's a magic wand, and they should just have the latest and greatest machine or technology or whatever to do their job. And the reality is that, that's not always the case. That sometimes manufacturers, and it doesn't matter what industry it is, they're shoving a machine in the shape of its duties to produce a product. And so there's been a number of stories about manufacturers, specifically in the gear industry, buying and selling old school machines to each other, or within that manufacturing chain, or overseas. And now a manufacturer is able to offer a different cut, because the 5-cut, as you mentioned, is not uncommon by any stretch. And that was the standard of manufacturing at one time.
It still is to this day.
Right. And the 2-cut just happens to be a machine that does it better. And that's a kind of an oversimplified, nature of it. But I think that that's fascinating. And of course, it aids in the longevity, aids in the quietness of the gears. There's a bunch of advantages. Sure. But again, the actual kind of society as a whole accepts a 5-cut ring and pinion, and they're none the wiser, right? The average person is none the wiser. I thought it was interesting, as we've started to work with your guys' stuff more and more, you actually include instructions or tips for whatever cut of gear it is.
Sure.
Because,
and listen, an experienced gear guy is going to understand that, but I know a lot of guys that might not have set up a ton of 2-cut gears, because again, a 5-cut's it's been around forever. So the pattern looks a little bit different. It takes a little bit getting used to. Some of the setup is almost the opposite of what you would do to get that correct pattern on a 5-cut compared to a 2-cut. So there's a little bit of, tips and, tricks of the trade. So you can read that gear pattern, right? Like I said, sometimes you actually might have a good gear pattern on a 2-cut, but you don't think you have a good pattern just because of the way that shape in the marking compound is compared to a traditional 5-cut. So, listen, we try to do our best to give you all the tools right up front, but if not, and it happens, that's why we have a sales and customer support team waiting for you. We got a lot of guys with a lot of experience. We've really assembled a great team over the years, really proud of these guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have all the respect in the world for a company that is not looking to blow smoke, that they're going, hey, this isn't magic. This is nuts and bolts. And yet we understand that there's a technical difference between that, right? Because I think there's too many companies who, kind of employ that reboxing method, that misdirection method, to be like, what we do is magic, and you're supposed to just accept that. And, as far as Revolution is going, hey, we have both these cuts of gears, and we need you to be successful with both of them. Whereas I think there's, again, a number of businesses that are going, you don't need to know this information. You know what I mean? Like, close enough is going to be good enough in this situation. And you guys are going, we can make it better.
I think, what you're alluding to is we take our partnerships with the shops and remanufacturers and whoever it is very seriously, right? Because it is a partnership. And I think when you start looking away from that and don't feel it's a partnership, that's kind of when things can fall apart. So we try to stay humble. I always say this, I'm pretty positive now, as of in the last year, we are the only aftermarket gear company that's still family owned and operated, which is huge today, right? I think that plays into morals and in a lot of different things. We're also veteran owned and operated. So I think we take those core values and really put it into our customer service and obviously the product itself.
Absolutely.
So speaking of that ownership and operation, where is headquarters? Where is distribution? Some of those logistics.
Yeah. So headquarters is in the suburbs of Chicago, about 30 miles west of the city. And that's I'm at headquarters. And then our second location is just outside of Los Angeles, Santa Fe Springs, California. So those would be our two offices and warehouse space, distribution spaces. And then obviously we have a ton, pretty much all the main players with WDs or warehouse distribution. That's nice, right? Because, in the beginning, when you have, like you said, an oversaturated space, which I feel like 10 years ago was very oversaturated, just a ton of brands and gear companies, not necessarily all making their gears, but they had a brand at least, right?
Yes.
And it was hard, obviously, just to get even into the shops, but let alone then go to some of the big auto parts distributors and say, hey, we'd like for you to, be a distributor of our product. And they kind of look at you and like, well, why should we bring on a seventh gear company?
Right.
So that was a struggle, but again, kind of in, like I said, about the last 3 years is really when everything just kind of the light switch was flipped on and everything just kind of fallen into place.
What would you attribute that to?
I think a lot of different things. I think, focusing on what we're doing, I think just staying the course with what we believe in, like I said, as far as how we want to go to market, and that's not reboxing. I think hiring the right people along the way, adding to our team, growing to our team. But again, picking those right people. But it starts, listen, I take it back to my military days. I was on an aircraft carrier, and we used to, a lot of the guys in the skin of the ship. And what I mean by that is on the inside that does all the little tedious
Don't worry. If you haven't watched our program, Scott can't speech worth a darn, and he's just,
There's a disconnection between here and here.
that's between his brain and his mouth. And so you fit right in. Don't worry about it. And honestly, you could just through the word.
Right.
We will know what it is. We'll smirk. We'll probably make fun of you, but you just keep on going, and our listeners will understand.
Yeah, I'm speaking their language, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
They've listened this far. They're going to keep going.
Yeah. So what I was getting at was a quick story is, there's a lot of support cast or support team for whatever company you work for or organization. And in my instance, I worked on a flight deck, right? And a lot of those guys, especially when I was in, was at kind of the height of the war over there. And a lot of those guys would get down because, they're scrubbing decks or they're cooking the food, or they're kind of buried in a small compartment and they don't unfortunately get to see the sunlight or feel that breeze. And, it just the camaraderie can get down at times. For us, I had a high intensity job on the flight deck, launching and recovering aircraft, right? Um, so there's different ways to bring about that camaraderie. And I think kind of to sum this up is one, I think we have really good camaraderie. We have the right people. So that is leadership down. But we try to show that we're a family and everyone works together. So my point is like the guys in admin here, and just the simple stuff, right? And then not so simple stuff. Think about the warehouse guys. Those guys really bust their humps. And if they're not working at max capacity and we can't ship the product, I don't care how good the product is. So, I think guys like myself and my sales team, sometimes, we're the face, if you will, because we get to do cool things like this podcast. We've done a number of TV shows. We got a couple TV episodes coming out soon. You see us at SEMA. You see it at all the cool shows like Jeep Beach and Smoky Mountain Invasion and all that stuff, right? But there's so much supporting cast that just kind of don't get the kudos, the pat on the back. We obviously we do that and try to do it and tell them, hey man, every cog on the wheel is important. So,
Right.
Just to kind of sum that up, those are the types of things where it's sometimes the guys that you don't see or don't think about, that really play a huge factor in a brand like ourselves and growing that brand and staying relevant and just keep pushing that threshold.
So we have a commenter saying that they're about to have a 88 and put into their 92, and we're making them think of everything that they need to ask the shop about gears. With that being said, are there questions that you would recommend a general Jeeper ask their local shop before getting new gears?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yes, I would. If it's not a shop that you've been to multiple times, let's say, I would ask questions. Is the physical work of installing a gear might not be overly hard, meaning just the, unbolting stuff. Yeah, that's probably not that overly difficult, but as you guys are well aware, there's specialty tools, right? There's knowing how to use those specialty tools and how to read the backlash gauge. My point is it's complicated because of all the steps that you need to take and all the fine potential adjustments that you need to do, right? So, if I were going into a shop that I don't know well and I don't have that relationship, it would be, in relations to my product would be, do you have a dedicated gear guy, and how long has the guy had been installing gears? And then as far as the product goes, I think for the most part, but I'm sure there's quite a bit of install kits out there that aren't using quality bearings and maybe quality small parts. I think a lot of times that stuff could be overlooked. But listen, if you're not using a reputable brand for bearings, I don't care how good the gear is manufactured. You have a bearing failure, and it's either getting redone, or these things is, people don't necessarily know this. You can't just simply replace a ring gear, or you can't just simply replace a pinion if part of that gear set fails. Right? Those gears are lapped together during the manufacturing process, and so think of them as they're married together. Right? So if one goes bad, you got to replace both. Or there is instances where if you have a bad bearing and you wear a bad pattern into the gear, you might not necessarily have a bad gear, but for the life of that gear set, you're going to have maybe some whine or some noise, and that can be annoying to the consumer, right? So, to my point, those small parts are just as important as the gear set. And if you're not using, I would say obviously the top two would be Timken and Koyo in our space. That's not to say there's not other good bearings, right? National, SKF, just a few to that come to mind. But if you're not using a really good bearing, that gear setup is, I'm not saying it's going to fail, but I think you definitely have a greater chance of having a noisy gear set.
How we look at bearings here is we first started looking at what the OEs were using, and Timken and Koyo were pretty much the standard. And if they're willing to put a vehicle out at the price they cost and with the warranty they elaborate, and they're willing to put their name on a Timken or a Cuello, then we feel the same way. Quick question going back a little bit before we get too far about the 2-cut or 1-cut versus 5-cut. Does it matter on the gear ratio which cut you get, or is it pretty much an axle, like JK44 is going to be one way, JL44 is going to be another way, or is it when you get off into the deeper cuts? I know for back in the olden days when we would do TJs and you get like a 488 and the gears were pinion head was very small and you're in almost a different world. Does that, when cuts, make a difference?
I mean, it probably doesn't hurt. And that's a great question. But no, it's not necessarily a 5-cut versus 2-cut as far as the deeper ratios you get. Like I said, it probably doesn't hurt, but it's not necessarily, when we go to market, we're like, all right, 410s, 456s, and 488s, we're going to make a 5-cut, and then 513s and numerically higher, we're going to go to a 2-cut. That's not how we necessarily go about that. So that's a great question, though. Very good question.
But is it then JL axle versus JK axle? Is that what I was understanding from you? I think is
so. Our JKs are 5-cut.
That's what I thought. Your JKs are 5-cut, JLs are 2-cut. Then JL,
yes,
JT.
We started off when we were actually the first aftermarket company to release JL gears, and I think again that was kind of at the start of that turning point. So we were like, we just not rushed like where we made mistakes. We were just like, we want to get a product out there. We want to be front and center, that we got this new model. The new model was just released. But we made it because it was the easiest to make in a 5-cut, right? And then as time went on, we were like, we like to keep our standard at an OE level, right? And so if the OE is making something, we kind of have that mindset that we want to be at least as good. I mean, if you can be better, that's great. But that's kind of where our mindset was. And we do, we had such great success on the other axle family in the 2-cut. And that was really the only reason. We saw an opening to where it was like, nobody else is doing this other than OE. So again, we want to be in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Now, kind of hopscotching around on the 8.8 level, one of the things that and it kind of goes to my conversation about brands and who and how I'll put on blast. And arguably, my contention is not to kind of lump brands into good and bad, but basically product offerings and, kind of general expectations that a company can make certain lines very, very good and other production lines, not so good or they don't care about, right? It's a pursuit that they're not fully invested in. So oftentimes I'll be critical in a suspension. There's a particular rough country suspension that I absolutely abhor that is sold, but we do in fact sell rough country. And so my intention is not necessarily to say that rough country is a bad company, because they're not. They're actually a very good company, but that there are product lines that they offer that I don't think that are worth our customers' time, energy, and resources. And so with that said about Yukon, and I was putting them, out there earlier, and I want them to be, fulfill the integrity and to just simply do what they said they're going to do. So with that and the 8.8 that's being built, one of the things that I still use from Yukon would be their 8.8 big bearing C-clip eliminator kit. Is that a kit or a product that Revolution also has available for the market? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. We don't. That kind of goes back to where, I definitely would say we have a full line of axle offerings, because we do, but there's some little niche things where we don't have that. And I think that also plays into where And I have no clue um, if they make it or they source it, right?
Sure.
I'm not even speculating, but I think that just at least on our end kind of comes into play where we are over the last 2-3 years in that growth. That's when we're starting to look at some of that more niche stuff and saying, all right, we need to have an offering for it. So I hate using the term playing catch up on that stuff, but we just decided to focus in different areas and growing in different ways. But we're always, I mean, it's daily. I mean, and that's what I love about our sales reps. I mean, it's 5, 10, 20 times a day where they're like, we need to come out with this and we need to come out with that. They get serious. I have a spreadsheet and we discuss it in our weekly sales meetings. We discuss it in our management meetings. And I think we got some really cool, exciting stuff coming out. But to your point, where the growth has been so rapid over those 3 years, something like the 8.8 eliminator kit, where you're just like, it's there, it's on a list. It's just
And we get that.
it's on the list.
It's one of those situations too. We've had to actually kind of rein in some customers that when you own a TJ, the TJ stuff seems very valid and appropriate. And then when you have a CJ owner, that stuff is very appropriate to him. And you have to kind of remind them, like, well, how many CJ owners nationwide are regearing their axles? How many TJs now nationwide are putting 8.8s in? At one time, it was very common. We'd have 2 or 3 a month, and at this point, once a year.
Yeah, I was going to say TJs and the 8.8s for specifically.
Yes.
I mean, have gone down. I mean, we just recently, but we were actually rebuilding, refreshing an 8.8 that we had done without this kit a few years prior.
Yeah.
And we're not even doing fresh 8.8 builds necessarily.
Right. So that's something that you kind of always need to be cognizant of the market is what sells every day is JL and JT kits.
Correct.
JKs will probably flank right after that, and then the others will follow suit. And that is primarily the people that are looking to upgrade, not maintenance their vehicles. Obviously, older vehicles will need maintenance, but then they're going to want to go back with what they have. And around here, Explorers are not on the road anymore.
Right.
So
accessing an 8.8 in that regard is harder than ever.
It's a depreciating asset.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. I mean, we kind of decide on what we're going to do, what the market dictates, right? And I would love to have everything, but again, that also then goes against, because the fastest way to do that is to then maybe look outside to fill those voids. And it's just not something we're willing to we're just we won't compromise our quality control. But to your point, if there's still a market, that doesn't mean that we don't come out with stuff that on some of the older models, right? We do. We launched a drive shaft line probably about 2 years ago now, and we just did it for the JL, JTs, and JKs because we're kind of feeling it out. And then about probably just 3-4 months ago, we went back. We did XJs and TJs and LJs. So that doesn't mean if a product category is going well, and we see and a drive shaft's maybe not a perfect example, right? A drive line is in a sense a drive line, right? You're just, as long as you're taking measurements and you're using a good quality tubing and slip yokes and U joints and the balancing's done correctly. But my point is if we see a hole, or we see that we're getting on traction on something, then that's something where we can go back and fit some of those older vehicles.
Just because you brought it up, and I feel like I'm the technical guy here for this conversation for some reason. On your drive shafts, do you come with yokes that need to be swapped onto the axles, or are they made with flanges for like specifically the JK and the JL, where they will bolt in place of the original?
Bolt in place. I mean, you can do we have two. You can do the bolt in place with the flange, or you can do a yoke. Obviously, somebody that's going to try to if we're selling direct to a consumer and they want to just do it on their back in their driveway, the flange is the way to go.
Absolutely.
But, for something that's a little bit stronger, that pinion yoke is the way to go. Now, that's something that they're going to have to go like at your guys' shopping, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because now you're talking about crush sleeve and all kinds of things. Now, that's more of a technical thing, right? Because you
Yeah.
got to make sure you get your pinion berry preloads correct and so on and so forth.
Oh, we've seen it very often where the consumer just doesn't understand that detail, and their buddy will grab their impact and like, oh, we'll get it done. And next thing they know, their axle is compromised for a multitude of reasons. So we have not only educated but rebuilt those axles in those situations to the point that we have literally brought that up to a conversation when people are doing axles. What dry shafts are you going to use now and in 6 months and to a year? Because some things need to go together one time.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Matt, how did you personally get involved? So you spoke a little bit on your military service, which is, admirable, and we appreciate that. But how do you make that transition and you yourself get into gears and internals?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of try not to be super long winded. It's kind of been I guess in the beginning was a weird voyage, but I got out, let's call it January 1st of 2008 from military, and I was a jet mechanic in the Navy. So I got out and worked at the airport. Did that for about a year. That was right when the Great Recession, if you want to call it that, and fortunately I didn't lose my job, but management came in one day and basically was like, we're not going to lay anyone off, but everyone's taking a 30% pay cut.
Wow.
And 30% is 30%. So, I, that paired with, I didn't love aviation as a civilian compared to military. And I think it was just solely because, like I said, I was fortunate to work on a flight deck. I mean, you want to talk about organized chaos. It was fun. It was exciting. The danger element to it too. And then, you're working on a flight line at an airport and you're just like, wow, I realized it was probably less about being the mechanic, but just the environment I was a mechanic in. Right. So after that they came in and said, you're going to take a pay decrease. I started looking elsewhere. Long story short, I had a buddy. I was putting a lot of feelers out there, and he said, I think you'd be, you're a very personable dude. I think you'd do well in sales. So my first sales job was liquor sales. I did that for about a year. And then kind of the same effect with the economy was still terrible. And that was union. So I was just low man on the totem pole. So they furloughed like 200 employees. So I wasn't fired per se, but I was let go. And I reached out to my uncle, and my uncle had been in the automotive industry for 30 years. And he was like, listen, I'll put feelers out there. Chances are, if I can get you something, it's not industry related. And I said, well, I don't really care necessarily what industry it is, but I really do enjoy sales. But I was intrigued with the automotive industry because I had a mechanical background, right?
Sure.
So long story short, I said that. I think that's the second or third time I said long story short.
Hey, you know what? You're talking to us. And again,
That guy right there.
nobody's going to be surprised about this. Not one bit.
All right, good. So maybe 6 weeks later, uncle calls me up, says, you're not going to believe this. He goes, the people keep this job just because it's fun. And it's, the company you work for paid fairly well. Anyways, got me a job. I was there for just shy of a decade. And I was a territory sales manager. So I was in charge of a large part of the Chicago metropolitan area, 5 actual individual parts stores and 2 warehouses. And I just called on shops, and kind of a territory sales manager was like a liaison between the shops and the stores and the distribution centers we had. And then overall, really good company that I worked for. Enjoyed my time. There was some things towards the end is when I kind of started looking to maybe do something else. And the owner of Revolution, our company, was looking at the time for an outside salesperson because the company had an outside salesperson. And it was just a few years after the branding, right? So it was still very new and still very fresh. And I got to tell you, he sold me on the idea of being a part of a startup, more or less, and growing a brand. And man, that sounded sexy. It sounded super intriguing. And we had a lot we could relate on. He was a naval officer who had just gotten out maybe the year prior. So we kind of connected on that level as well. And I took a leap of faith. And here we are.
Very cool.
8.5 years later, I believe.
We definitely understand.
Yeah, we understand that all too well. We are, kind of the clock is ticking on us. Is there anything that you would have liked to have shared with us or with our listeners? That maybe there wasn't an opportune time.
No, listen, I loved the open forum, format where, sometimes it's always good to be prepared, but I think, you guys are running an awesome show here, and it's super laid back, kind of Wayne's World vibes, which I love.
Wow.
I'm not. Whoa. Okay. Okay. I don't know that I felt that one, but we'll take it.
I think it's more to Grandma's couch, like you said, right? And I mean that I love Wayne's World. It holds a special place in my heart. That's actually, they filmed it in Los Angeles, but it's supposed to take place in a parent's basement in Chicago. So,
Yep.
Right. No, I think we covered a lot of things. I mean, obviously, we talked about our core values. We talked about, it's what we manufacture. We didn't really touch on axles. I think, we sell a ton of axles. So just to throw that out there, we have a great axle program as far as axle shafts go. Just touched on the drive shafts, and we're looking at expanding. I mean, and what I mean by that is coming out with maybe ratios that where we have holes or the industry has holes, some new axle kits that we want to come out with, because the 4340 chromolyes are a hit, obviously, in the Jeep community. We're always looking to expand different axle families. Doesn't necessarily speak to Jeep, but we're always looking at what vehicles are popular in off-roading, right? The Colorado, there was a competitor of ours that went out of business last year, and I think they were about the only one on the market with the gear for it. And then so we were like, all right, there's a hole there, and there's a demand there, because we started getting phone call after phone call. So we came out with the late model Colorado and Canyon gears, and they've been selling great. But no, I think we touched on a lot of things, keeping it light and just a fun conversation to have with you gentlemen. But you can go to revolutiongear.com at any time. Anything that we have new or that's either coming out or we just released will be, spotlighted on the home screen. And, it's all this success that our company has had over the last few years. It's not lost on me or anyone within the company. It's fun doing stuff like this, right? Like I said, we just did a TV show that's going to be coming out in December and January, I believe. That's 3 episodes. But being asked to do those television shows, being asked to do podcasts like this, that's what I mean where it's not lost on me in Revolution, right? Sure. Because there was a time we weren't being asked to do this stuff. So that's really what kind of showcases our grassroots approach to it. And the hard work is paying off now.
Awesome. Absolutely. And congratulations to you guys for that. And appreciated your approach, years ago when you first, solicited me, and kind of look where we're at now, and our opportunity to kind of continue to grow our brands together. I hope that our listeners all enjoyed this conversation with Matt from Revolution Gear and Axle. And as he mentioned, there is a ton of other product offerings that they do have, that they themselves under the branding of Revolution, but also their parent company, from internals of transmission transfer cases to obviously now drive shafts and gears and axles, not just ring and pinions, despite the fact that that's kind of where their stronghold of market relevancy comes from. With that said, if our listeners have any, further questions or information, maybe as an opportunity, we'll be able to follow up with them in the future, as far as with Revolution and Matt. If you have any questions, you can always reach us at our text-only number, 440-855-2100, or email us at contact, CONTACT, at sfj4x4.com. Additionally, we are still looking for those people to leave us a review, screenshot it. You need to leave a review on your favorite streaming platform, Spotify, Audible, iTunes, so on and so forth, but maybe specifically iTunes, because that is what helps this program get suggested to your friends, family, and greater members of the Jeep and off-road community.
And more importantly, then you do that, take a screenshot, send to Jeff, so you can get the best, shortest purple strap you ever possibly could use when your gear set fails because they're not Revolutions.
Until next time, folks.
Can plug.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Matt's staying in with us while our weekend updates, I think, is happening. I thought that's what I overheard.
Yeah.
So my weekend update was kind of a crash and burn, and then having to soothe my soreness by hauling more junk home. So we tried to dig with a backhoe in a round hole, and even though the 24 inches sounds so big, it's not quite big enough to use the backhoe to do that. So we tried for an hour, and then we tried to cattywampus think of how we're going to make something to do it. And then I heard you in my head, and I just was like, oh, no, I'm waving the white flag. I'm going to message the professional, and I'm going to be like, please come save me. So after that, kind of just wallowed in self-pity. And then
Fair.
The next day, went to a class, and then afterwards went and hauled home a 317 Lincoln Y block because it was going to get scrapped, and I can't let that happen.
Are you kidding? Are you freaking kidding me?
It is the first Y block Ford made, and it is a big block Y block, which means it shares no parts with any other Y block, as such for the big truck Y blocks. So this is a perfect thing for Scott the Horde.
Why?
I don't know.
Why? It is a boat anchor. Let it become a boat anchor.
It's fair.
Let it. I mean, China would love to make a pop can out of it right now.
This thing weighs enough. You could probably make 3 Hyundais out of it. So I just can't help myself. Ironically, even though it's a Ford product, it has an AC Delco fuel pump, and it has a Hydromatic GM transmission, which is a 4-speed automatic in 1953.
Really?
So I'm intrigued. I can't help it.
Especially out of a Lincoln, and that's what they would have,
Yep. And the other thing that's really interesting is the flex plate is actually the front part of the torque converter. So in order to separate the two, there is no short of 1,100 bolts that bolts to the main shell. And then when you take that apart, you actually see the turbine inside the torque converter.
Really?
It's interesting.
And I have so many questions. Was this removed out of a vehicle? Was this in somebody else's garage? One man's junk is another man's treasure?
So this is a Lincoln that someone purchased that was in an estate. It sat for a long time. Old man was going out and tinkering with it. They don't really know what was going on with it other than it had way too much oil in it. So maybe he had just kind of gotten some memory issues and kept putting oil in the motor. Didn't run. And instead of, big scary world for parts and that kind of stuff, people will make a bigger mountain out of a molehill. And they decided just to pull the drivetrain and put an LS in the car.
World.
So
they LS the 53 Lincoln is what I hear.
Well, the sad part is as projects go, they removed the engine and transmission with intent to put an LS in it, and then they haven't.
Okay.
So I got told afterwards, once I got the motor home, if I wanted the car too, I could, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to play with the motor, learn some stuff, have my 6 weeks, learn. I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I can't learn unless I'm touching stuff. So, gonna look into it, tear it apart, see if it's a viable motor, and go from there. It's cool regardless.
Yeah.
The valve covers, have the Lincoln insignia on them. So
back when we actually made stuff with purpose and care and
absolutely
bossed into it. Yeah.
And like I told my wife, you could probably make 4 cast iron skillets out of the bell housing off the transmission. It's just amazing, again, how they didn't care about efficiency and lightness and that kind of stuff. It was just, how can we hit it with a big sledgehammer?
Yeah, how robust can we make something?
So that was my fun.
That's pretty cool.
I figured you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I was not, obviously nobody was expecting that.
But the cubic inch 317, that speaks right to Neil.
Oh, it's so weird. So good. So good. My own peculiarities, of course, I'm, continuing my 6 weeks tirade of kind of welcoming, sports balls back into my life in a semi-professional manner. I was probably, nothing shy of 6 or 7 different contests over the weekend between friends and family and whatnot, getting myself overly involved in the foosball. And so I had a nice time with that in general. So scheduling my weekend around, those types of things. But then I did manage to prioritize some time to try and service my tractor, which of course I know is a peculiarity for both of you, because you guys want to
service a tractor.
You don't need to service anything as far as you two are concerned when it comes to those agri implements, right?
Absolutely.
And so because I had, a whopping like 10 hours on my backhoe, I needed to grease and service every
10 hours.
So yes, I figured you guys would appreciate that. So I found myself in the most, old man fashion, trying desperately to pump grease into Zerk fittings and configurations and move implements around in such a way that I could, contort myself and said grease gun into position to sufficiently grease them. Then when it's kind of spilled over, I was grabbing on my finger and, again, in most old man fashion possible, just randomly wiping it on things that seemingly would benefit from having grease on them.
Oh, dear.
So now my tractor is a big greasy mess.
Yeah, sure.
I feel pretty good about that.
The only reason mine gets greased at all is because I have a Milwaukee grease gun that I don't have to pump. I just pull the trigger.
Well, I mean, that really does. It is a game changer, unquestionably.
But the ones that between the deck and the tractor, that doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Mine doesn't have grease fittings. Meh.
Just kind of keep beating it into the shape of implement for you to use. I get it.
When you got a deer, you don't have to maintain it.
Yeah, that's right. Matt, what about you? Do you have any fun stories over the weekend or projects that you're working on?
What did I do? Getting my hot tub ready for the winter.
That is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
So
you're not going to use it for the winter? You don't use it? You're not a winter hot tubber?
I'm a winter hot tubber big time. I just don't use it in the summer. I know some people will.
Oh, you're readying it to use for winter.
Exactly. I'm getting that ready. So that wasn't fun.
Right.
But I did it. My son had his last baseball game of the season. He had a good game. Unfortunately, the team kind of collapsed and we lost in the last inning. But
oh, dear. Fall ball? Is this fall ball or is this a continuation from summer ball?
It's fall ball.
Okay. So our fall ball continues for another enduring 3 weeks. So, yeah, we're going to be playing in the snow here.
Yeah,
first swear at me.
Yeah, and then a lot of so I'm a big hunter, and my son has started hunting with me. He's 11, so he started about 2 years ago. So just getting the bows out and getting a lot of archery practice. So that was my weekend.
That's awesome. It's America wrapped up in a nutshell there, as far as a little bit of leisure, a little bit of sports, and a little bit of provision.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeffifa, you would bring us home?
Well, other than going to Scott's house trying to help him with the building, we were all gung-ho until I realized that he collapsed in 2 of the holes, and I was like, nope.
Scott himself collapsed into 2 of the holes.
So what happened was, is I thought
What had happened was,
I was helping because I took the front bucket and just scooped off top because the skid steer was having a problem going steep enough because 5 feet is a lot. So he was running into the ground, and because it was all mounded over, I thought, I'll just scoop that off, and if something falls in the hole, no big deal. Until the skid steer doesn't show back up, that's the problem.
yeah.
That's the worst part is I had nobody to blame but myself.
Yeah.
Making it more challenging.
And it was,
So you weren't back dragging it. I had heard that you back dragged it.
it looked like back dragging.
So you
because of the way.
scooped over the hole is
Yes.
what I think I heard.
Yes.
What the heck was going through your head? I understood back dragging. I kind of thought, that makes sense. That's
But
a
then
good
you have to
idea.
take the backhoe off, and I didn't want to do that.
That's what I thought. You took the backhoe off, and I was like, oh, man, I'm definitely not doing that anytime soon. I think my backhoe is attached forever. I bought a box blade that's now just a paperweight.
It's pretty to look at.
It's pretty to look at. Yeah, other than that, though, I just I spent some time getting caught up on nonprofit things for my nonprofit. Obviously, have a lot of administrative work, accounting work to do post-event,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get all that cleaned up and back on track. Having a week of being sick didn't help. Didn't really get much done on nonprofit front. So a lot of time on the weekend doing that, and that was pretty much the weekend.
100%. Well, I, again, appreciate, Matt, you prioritizing this time and all of Revolution Gear and Axle for, participating in this and being so forthcoming with our listeners. Would love to have you back on in the future at some point in time. And ideally we'll be able to hook up and touch base at SEMA coming up in about a month or so. And that will be good. You'll be out there, I'm assuming. Excellent. I'll look for you. And our listeners, thank you for hanging in there with us, and again prioritizing this as your infotainment. We got a lot of Jeeps to build, a lot of good things to be done here. So until next time, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.